think the other thing that's missed is the idea or the understanding that when you've taken those lower building blocks that you have higher confidence in, and you've built a maximally diversified portfolio, when you tilt the portfolio, you are likely increasing the standard deviation of the portfolio and you have to be more right because you've imparted this tilt, and that tilt takes away from the diversification. So the least likely thing that you believe you can predict, i.e. Sharpe ratio, you have to have a really high confidence in that because you're giving up the other two layers. And I think that's just absolutely lost. People don't understand. And this is kind of the core idea of you start with risk parity. And once you understand this maximally diversified portfolio and you lever it up to whatever risk that you can tolerate, when you step away from that, you are embedding a prediction of a Sharpe ratio, which you have a much lower confidence in than the other components of inputs for the portfolio. Yeah, and it's a higher hurdle than people think.
That's right. I think it's not. People think they're layering returns, right? They think, okay, I start with my base case, and then I'm going to layer this return. But what's actually happening is you're taking away the rebalance premium, what we talk a lot. And so you're adding an expected diversity return with less. Yeah, the diversity, which leads to the rebalance premium. Yep. You're taking away from this, and what you're adding needs to be, the hurdle is what you're taking away. So you're not layering anything. You're losing something, and you'd better be gaining something really big to do better than the base case.
I mean, it goes back to the very first discussion we had, where I say, well, you take some of your portfolio and you use that for, say, opportunistic stuff, what have you. Well, the kind of hurdle rate on that is not zero. It's what you would have made, is what you expect Correct. To make on what you've already got. So you need to be very convinced, as you say, you need to be very convinced that this is absolutely the right thing to do. And that's why, and that knowledge that this is quite different. What I'm about to do is going to be quite hard to get right. Is what should make you say, well, I'm not going to put 100% of my portfolio into this crazy thing. I'm going to put this much in because because I know I'm pretty confident this is a good idea. I'm confident enough I'm going to do some of this, but I'm no means arrogant enough to think that I can take 100% of my portfolio. I'm going to limit it to 5% or 10% or whatever. And there's a lot of jargon in the investment industry that kind of is confusing, misleading. And I mean, you guys are old enough to remember this idea of core and satellite, which kind of gone out of fashion now. But there was some kind of that actually I found quite a helpful way of thinking about the world. Like basically, you start with this. And what we can have, and you obviously, what we start with, we have a big debate about, and then you do a bit of this on top, and again we can have a bit of a debate about that. But it's a different approach from, as you say, the idea of layering things up. I mean, I remember a discussion I had with somebody during the last market crash, and the guy said, "Well, you know, I'm no idea what's going to happen, so I've gone 100% into cash." I'm like, well, that's a huge decision. You're making a huge. You're actually making a confident
expression in what's going to happen.
You have actually made a much bigger decision, a much bigger statement about what you think is going to happen than I have. Going for, I think I going to say 50% cash or whatever at the time.
And then you said if instead of cash, you should buy 100% Bitcoin, right?
Well, this is the point I was trying to make earlier on when you were talking about those subtle changes you had made in the portfolio in March 2020. Right, they were subtle, and they absolutely understood the trade-offs that we're talking about now, and they understood that you understood the humility with which you need to think about those outside tilts, and that's I think that point can't be emphasized enough.